Washington training camp is basically at the doorstep, and we just got a piece of news that changes everything about how this team should be approaching the wide receiver position. Tyreek Hill, still sitting out there as a free agent, just posted something on Instagram that should end any lingering hope the Commanders had about waiting on him. And once you hear what he actually said, and once you look at what's actually available on the open market right now, there's a move sitting right in front of Adam Peters and Dan Quinn that honestly should have already been made. Let's get into exactly what Tyreek Hill said, why it matters, and why Stefon Diggs is sitting there as close to a perfect answer as this team could possibly ask for. And it's worth sitting with just how severe that original injury actually was, because this wasn't some minor tweak. A torn ankle alone is a serious career-altering injury on its own for most players. Tack on a torn MECL, a torn PCL, and a torn meniscus, all in the same knee, all at the same time, and you're talking about one of the more significant leg injuries any skill player in this league has dealt with in recent memory. Multiple ligaments being compromised simultaneously means the entire structural integrity of that knee had to be rebuilt, not just patched up. That's why it took 2 separate surgeries to even begin addressing everything that went wrong in that single play. Recoveries from injuries this extensive typically stretch well beyond a calendar year before a player is back to anything resembling their old explosiveness, and for a receiver whose entire game is built on suddenness, that timeline matters enormously. So here's the update. Back in Week 4 of last season, Tyreek Hill suffered one of the more gruesome leg injuries you'll see in this league. A torn ankle, torn MECL, torn PCL, and a torn meniscus, all in the same leg, all at the same time. That required 2 separate surgeries to repair. And now, about 10 months removed from those surgeries, with training camps opening up across the league next week, Tyreek posted an update on his own recovery, and it was not the update anyone hoping for his return wanted to hear. In his own words, his left leg, the injured one, currently has no power in it. He said he's working every single day to try to regain that strength, but it's a day-by-day process, and there's no clear finish line yet. Think about what that actually means for a player like Tyreek Hill specifically. This is a guy whose entire game is built around one thing more than almost anyone else in the league: pure explosiveness. He is not a possession receiver who wins with size or physicality at the catch point. His value has always come from his ability to push off, accelerate, and separate from defenders before they even have a chance to react. If he can't generate power out of that leg, if he can't explode off of it the way he needs to, he is simply not the same player, and honestly, he might not be a functional NFL player at all right now. And here's the practical reality on top of that: no team is signing a player who can't pass a physical. If a team's medical staff looks at that knee and sees a player who still doesn't have functional push-off strength, that's a fail on a physical full stop. That includes Washington. So if the Commanders were sitting back this offseason quietly hoping Tyreek Hill would get healthy enough to be a training camp option, it is time to officially move on from that idea. He is very unlikely to be ready for Week 1, and waiting around for a maybe at this point is a luxury this team doesn't really have anymore. So if not Tyreek Hill, then who? Because let's be honest about where this receiver room actually stands right now. You've got Terry McLaurin, who is without question a legitimate #1 receiver in this league, no argument there. But after him, it gets murky fast. Antonio Williams is an intriguing rookie with real upside, but he's completely unproven at the NFL level. Demar Brown showed some chemistry with Jayden Daniels previously, but he's coming off a rough season down in Jacksonville. Trayvon Burks flashed some real talent. That one-handed grab last season was a legitimate highlight, but he hasn't strung together a full season of consistent production. And then you've got Luke McCaffrey and Jalen Lane, both speed-based options who haven't yet proven they can be full-time starters. So when you add it all up, this is a room full of question marks behind one proven star. That's a fine depth chart if everything breaks right, But it's not a room you want to bet your entire season on heading into a critical year for both this coaching staff and this quarterback. And that matters even more this year specifically, given everything else this offense is trying to figure out. Washington is already installing a new offensive system this offseason, working in a new play caller, and asking its quarterback to adjust to a different style of football than what he's played his entire career. That's already a lot of change for one offseason. Layering on top of that a wide receiver room full of unproven names with no real safety net if one or two of those young guys don't pan out is asking for an awful lot to go right at the same time. Adding a steady, experienced veteran presence at receiver wouldn't just help the Bucs score, it would give this offense one less variable to worry about while everything else on that side of the ball is still being sorted out. And that brings us to the name that makes almost too much sense, Stefon Diggs. Let's walk through exactly why this should be the move, because there isn't just one reason here. There are several, and stacked together, they make this about as close to a slam dunk as you get in free agency. Reason number one, he can still flat out play. Diggs is getting up there in age by receiver standards. Sure, he's past 30 now, but last season he put up over 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns as the number one receiver for a New England Patriots team that made it all the way to the Super Bowl. That's not a declining player limping to the finish line. That's a receiver who, when healthy, is still a reliable 1,000-yard producer in this league. Adding a player with that kind of proven recent production to a receiver room desperately in need of a proven second option is exactly the kind of upgrade a team in Washington's position should be chasing right now. Reason number two, the room-wide upgrade this creates is massive. Right now, this wide receiver group is realistically a middling unit, one legitimate star in McLaurin, and then a collection of unproven pieces behind him. Slot Stefon Diggs into that wide receiver 2 role, and suddenly you've got a genuine 1-2 punch. 2 receivers who can both win at all 3 levels of the field, both with excellent hands and route-running polish. And then Antonio Williams becomes exactly what he should be, a complementary slot piece working underneath rather than being miscast as a number 2 receiver as a rookie before he's ready for that role. On top of that, adding Diggs actually makes Terry McLaurin better too, because defenses can no longer roll every bit of coverage attention toward him. That means more favorable matchups downfield for McLaurin specifically. And it upgrades the wide receiver 3 spot as well, because instead of hoping Demar Brown, Trayvon Burks, or Luke McCaffrey are ready to handle significant snaps, you've got a much stronger overall trio with a proven veteran anchoring things. One signing, and suddenly every single spot in that starting receiver group looks better on paper. And this kind of ripple effect isn't just a nice theory, it's something we've seen play out across the league over and over again. Defenses only have so many resources to allocate on any given snap. Extra safety help, bracket coverage, a cornerback's best matchup, all of that gets prioritized toward whichever receiver poses the biggest threat. Right now, that's entirely Terry McLaurin, which means defenses can commit extra attention to him without much cost, because there isn't a second option punishing them for it. The moment you add a receiver of Stefon Diggs' caliber, that calculation completely changes. Now a defense has to make an actual choice about where to allocate its best coverage, and no matter which way they lean. Somebody on this offense is getting a favorable matchup. That's the kind of dynamic that doesn't just make one player better, it lifts the ceiling of the entire passing game. Reason number 3, Washington can absolutely afford this, and it's not close. According to reporting from ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, Diggs would reportedly be willing to sign a 1-year deal in the range of $8 to $12 million. That's real money, sure, nobody's saying it's nothing. But the Commanders currently sit with the 3rd most cap space of any team in the entire NFL heading into this season. Somewhere in the neighborhood of $44 million available. Even after signing Diggs at the higher end of that reported range, this team would still have around $30 million in cap flexibility left over for the rest of the year. When you can add a proven 1,000-yard receiver and still have that much room to maneuver financially, it's genuinely difficult to construct an argument against making this move. And then there's reason number 4, which honestly might be the most compelling piece of the entire puzzle. Stefon Diggs actually wants to be here. This isn't a situation where a front office has to convince a reluctant free agent to consider a new market. Diggs is a native of the DMV area. He played his college football at the University of Maryland right in Washington's backyard, and by all indications, he wants to come home. In his own words recently, he talked about how he never fully realized how much support he had back home until he became a free agent and people started reaching out asking if he was coming back. He talked about having a real piece of himself wanting to return and play in front of the community that watched him grow up as a young player, and about wanting to do something meaningful for the city. And he hasn't just said it, he's been showing it. There's been social media back and forth between Diggs and Commanders edge rusher Quan Chasson, a former teammate of his in New England. That strongly hints at mutual interest. He's been training in the Maryland area over the offseason with a wide receiver skills coach, and in some of those very same training sessions, Commanders receiver Van Jefferson has been right there working out alongside him. And if you look closely at footage of Diggs running routes this offseason, the footballs he's using are actual Washington Commanders practice footballs. Every single signal points in the same direction. This is a player who has essentially been laying the groundwork publicly for a return home. And there's something worth noting beyond the pure football logic here too. The marketing and fan engagement angle is real. A DMV native University of Maryland product coming home to play for the Commanders is exactly the kind of storyline that resonates with a fan base, sells jerseys, and builds goodwill in a market that's still rebuilding trust with its ownership situation. It's not the deciding factor by any means. Football value always comes first. But when the football case and the sentimental homecoming case both point toward the same conclusion, that's about as aligned as these situations ever get. So when you stack all 4 of those factors together, the proven recent production, the massive room-wide upgrade, the very manageable cost against a huge cap surplus, and a player who genuinely wants this exact situation, this really does look like one of the clearer no-brainer moves available to any team in the league right now. If Adam Peters isn't already on the phone with Stefon Diggs' representation, it's fair to wonder what exactly the front office is waiting for. And yet, as of right now, the Commanders have remained quiet. Nothing has happened at the wide receiver position, and reporting from Jeremy Fowler indicates the team is not currently looking to add a receiver before camp opens. So let's talk through a couple of reasons why that might actually be the case, because there are a few plausible explanations here beyond simple inaction. One possibility that would honestly be a mistake, in my opinion, is if the front office is still holding out hope on Brandon Aiyuk instead. And look, there's real talent there. Nobody's denying that. But between the very public back and forth Aiyuk has had with Jayden Daniels on social media, and Aiyuk reportedly signaling that he intends to keep engaging in that kind of public back and forth even after signing somewhere, it's hard to see how that situation ends up being worth the distraction, especially when a cleaner, more team-friendly option is sitting right there in Diggs. The more reasonable explanation is probably this: the coaching staff genuinely wants to get eyes on their current group in training camp before committing real money elsewhere. They want to see whether Antonio Williams looks ready to handle a real role as a rookie. They want to see how Demar Brown looks reunited with Jayden Daniels. And most notably, there's been some encouraging buzz about Luke McCaffrey specifically. Reports suggesting his route running and burst are looking sharp as he continues working his way back from injury. If McCaffrey or one of these other younger pieces genuinely looks ready to handle a real role, maybe the front office feels like they don't need to spend $8 to $12 million on a veteran when a cost-controlled option might be able to step up instead. There's also a scenario where the front office is simply being patient with the broader market. Waiting to see if Diggs' asking price softens further as camp approaches and other landing spots dry up, or waiting to see how other teams handle their own receiver needs before committing term and dollars. Front offices do this kind of dance every single offseason. Nobody wants to be the team that overpays out of urgency when a similar deal might be available for less money a couple weeks later. That's a defensible strategy in a vacuum. The risk, of course, is that it only works if Diggs is actually still available when Washington decides they're ready to move, and that's never guaranteed with a player this talented sitting on the open market this close to the start of the season. That's a fair, defensible approach in theory. But here's the thing. None of that has to be an either-or decision. Sign Stefon Diggs now, bring him into camp, let him start building chemistry with Jayden Daniels and learning the playbook immediately, and if Luke McCaffrey or Trayvon Burks or Antonio Williams also step up in a big way during camp, that's not a conflict. That's simply a deeper, more talented offense than anyone expected. Worst case, you've still got one of the better receiver rooms in football. There's no version of this where signing a proven, motivated, cap-friendly veteran actively hurts this team's depth chart. The only risk here is standing still and hoping your unproven pieces figure it out in time, while a genuinely good, genuinely available, genuinely motivated receiver slips off the board to another team entirely. So where does that leave things heading into next week? Personally, I think this remains about as clear-cut as decisions get in the NFL. Stefon Diggs wants to be here. He's shown it in his words, and he's shown it in his actions all offseason long. He's a near-automatic 1,000-yard producer when healthy, and Washington has both the room in the receiver group and the room under the salary cap to make this work without sacrificing anything else this roster needs. If I'm Adam Peters, I'm picking up the phone today, and I'm doing everything possible to get Stefon Diggs on the practice field in Ashburn for that very first training camp session next Wednesday. So here's the question for you guys down in the comments. Do you think Washington signs a wide receiver before practice is open next Wednesday? Just a simple yes or no. I'm hoping it's a yes, and I'm hoping that receiver is Stefon Diggs, but I want to hear what you think and why. And if anything breaks on this front, whether it's Diggs, Aiyuk, or anyone else, we will have it covered here the moment it happens, all the way through the weekend and right up until camp opens. Once those practices actually get underway, we're going to be right there with daily updates breaking down every rep, every battle, and everything you need to know as this team heads toward the 2026 season. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, so you don't miss a single update between now and kickoff.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.